Hey, that's fine.
Okay, so good idea.
Probably won't matter much.
Hey, Dennis. Dennis.
Would you rather
Yeah.
have, Dennis, would you rather have Brad here though too?
Yeah, there's some folks coming at 11. They thought if you had wind discussion, it would be after the sheriff. So I think I don't know for sure,
Okay.
but
Well, we'll just leave it balling up alone. Okay.
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying. It'll probably be after 10:30 before we start in on the windmill and stuff. If you got something you want to do, you want to listen in, that's fine.
When you guys do these interviews, you want me to stay here?
We don't really have nothing to
I'll
do.
call Rich then when I step down.
Yes, Mr. Neal, this is Dennis Henry from Nemaha County Commission Desk. I'm fine. You still have some time to visit with us? Well, we've got some people in here and we just wanted to kind of visit with you a little bit or see what your feelings was, and then we'll call you back later after dinner, 1:30 or so, and get into the other aspects. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put you on speakerphone, but we have several people here, and we just wanted to kind of get up to speed, and Brad is here with us, so we can go from there. Yeah, no, we just wanted to kind of answer some questions and whatever you have or whatever we have, and kind of general for now is what I'm thinking. Yeah, he's here. Okay. So I'll put you on speakerphone for just a second. Okay. Okay, you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, we're all here and Brad's here. First of all, we appreciate you taking the time to visit with us again.
Sure, no worries at all. And I just wanted to say my apologies. I only had one call lined up today, and that begins in about 8 minutes. So we'll need to be efficient, although in about 45 minutes I'll be free for the rest of the day. And I will ask, is this are we in executive session right now, or is this a public?
We are not. We're in public. We're in the public right now.
Okay, that's fine.
And that's what I said. Later today, when we get a chance to visit with you, we'll go into executive session, and then we can go into the finer tunes of what we got.
Sounds good.
But I guess you've gotten some of the information from us, from Brad.
That is correct, and it's what I would expect. Certainly when I represented the developer, what I would try and do is give the most succinct and simplest documents I could, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's an efficiency thing. I have read through the documents. They're what I expected, bare bones. They get to the point. We will want more items, and certainly my deliverable to you, I think initially, is an outline of here are the things that, big picture wise, I would want compiled in our various documents.
Very good. Does anyone here have any questions for Mr. Neal while we got a chance to talk to him? Galen or anybody who's got? Brad, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. But what we was wanting, are you going to be available to come up some Monday, or do we need to make some other arrangements to visit with you in person, or?
No, I'd be happy to show up on Monday, and frankly, with your permission, if you want, I would certainly encourage that every Monday I just come up there, and that would be a very good time to sit down and give a weekly report. That way you can track the progress, and we can identify issues, and you have my full attention because I'm in front of you. Okay. I will tell you that I don't charge for travel, so this would not be an additional expense on the county. the actual travel time, I would charge my time there, but that's,
Okay.
hopefully that's reasonable.
Do we want to maybe just do like something before Brad, like at 11:30 or something every
What
week?
time would be best for you, like next Monday?
You know,
We're
as
look-
long as I have at least 2 days advance notice, I can move anything around.
Well,
So
we're
you
looking
just
at
tell me the
11.
best time.
I would say like 11.
After 11 o'clock, that way you wouldn't have to have your wife feed the dog or anything. You could,
That sounds fine. That'll give me a chance to get the girls to school.
yeah, it'd be great if you want to do that, and we'll plan on
11 o'clock.
land you being here at 11 o'clock next week, and then we can go with that. But that'll give the people that are here some indication of what we're wanting to do. I personally haven't had a chance to do much more than what we've already visited about. But like I said, we're kind of excited that you're willing to help us and in our position and work with us, and so we'll look forward to that. And we'll call you back or you email me, and then we'll give you a call from there.
That sounds good, and my firm is certainly honored and privileged to represent the county. So no thanks necessary. It is absolutely a privilege, and thank you for the engagement.
Okay.
All
I'm
right.
gonna do it in about
Talk to you
45
later.
minutes when he's available.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Bye.
He will be available at 11:45. He's going to email me
Okay.
or text me, and then maybe we can bring him up, and then we can go into an executive session to negotiate.
I think to look at the finer points of what we're looking at doing.
Find
legally
some of the
speaking,
things we
yes.
got. Okay, well, that's very good. That's what we got there. I think, Galen, you got anything that you're wanting to?
Well, Mary Kay's gonna get a few things. I had a conversation with Mark and Spencer about some other documents that they've used elsewhere in Kansas that may be relevant, plus a few other county things that I've looked at elsewhere. So Mary Kay's gonna try to get those together. Well, I don't know. Mary Kay, what do you think that'll take? A couple days?
Yeah, I mean, I'll get it done this week, sometime before we meet again next week.
All right.
I should be able to.
Well, I've really gotten a lot of, with the expansion of the footprint, I've gotten a lot of communication with that. I mean, I don't know, I know you say that it's all well and good and you have no problems, you can do that. My question was, why didn't you do the whole county? You know, I'm surprised you didn't do the whole county if you was gonna take 3/4 of it. You know, but that part of it is a big issue of mine, where it expanded as much as it did, and how the state, and of course you can't find much out through the state on that part of it, but anyway, on the internet. But
The state, which you, what do you
or
mean?
who authorized, when we authorized that resolution to give you
Oh, right, the initial
the-
footprint.
initial footprint, was that the state of Kansas, or is that the federal government?
The initial footprint, that was the state.
State.
Actually, this initial footprint, that was just between ourselves and the county.
But it's pursuant to what the state requires to
Right.
obtain that lifetime exemption versus a 10-year exemption. Now, whether or not, by expanding that footprint from the original resolution, whether or not anything outside that would receive the lifetime exemption, I don't know. Ultimately, that would be up to the state of Kansas Department of Revenue, unless we were to amend that resolution to modify the footprint.
You agree with that, Spencer, that would in fact be up to the state of Kansas, that area outside the initial, no offense, Brad,
Yeah.
but that's what you said. Is that what you guys are thinking? Is that,
No, I would agree with Brad.
Okay.
Yeah, the initial footprint was something that was negotiated between ourselves and then with the county, but as far as the validation of that and whether or not that would actually be included in a different footprint, Brad is right, that would be taken up.
so an application would have to be made for that area outside the initial footprint and tax?
I think that would have to be verified.
It determines, they're obviously going to apply for the exemption through the state of Kansas based upon that resolution, and then the Department of Revenue will then determine whether or not they're
Okay.
taxed or not. That's not us
Right.
for determining.
Right, okay, I was just getting that, trying to get that through my head.
One other question, you know, and I see you eliminated Jackson County. Is that because they're zoned?
No, it's not. We've built project in zone counties just as we have in unzoned counties. That's not a factor. We'd much rather, one, wind resources a lot better moving north. Two, in projects, we'd much rather just deal with one jurisdiction.
Another question I always get is number one is if wind resources are so good in Nemaha County, why is all the other state of Kansas got windmills and we don't yet?
Well, because it's
why
good
are we
that
the last? And
I wouldn't say you're the last, but it's a good resource. Or I wouldn't say, you know, I wouldn't say this is like the last or final frontier or anything like that. It's just this is another part of Kansas. I mean, a lot of Kansas has good wind. This is another part of Kansas that has really good wind.
okay. I mean, these are questions I get. Tim, you and Gary can go on, or if anybody here has any questions, we need to address them, because this is a good chance to get information for, you know, what's going on. Yes, sir?
I've heard it mentioned different times about this 1,400-foot offset setback, whatever you call it. Is that in writing anywhere? I understand it's an industry standard. Is it in writing? Because you guys kind of seem like you're assuming that that's in writing.
It's in our contract. And Mark, you can kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Correct. It is for the, like we went over this last time we were here, it's just participating landowners. And then we'll be happy to add that to contribution agreement, that it's from all residents.
It says for the landowners in their contract, but what about the persons not in the contract? Are they protected under the 14-foot, 100-foot, which is?
They are, but it will be added into it.
And do you feel like 1,400 feet is enough for a non-participating person?
Sure.
If he's not living in it.
I say no.
No, I mean, Spencer and Mark, I mean, because, you know, we've got a lot of situations where maybe some here, you know, have sold off 5 acres to their son, their daughter, you know, or whoever. And they might have 3 or 4 of these 5-acre things along the highway. And if it's my understanding that if Dad decides, or whoever owns the land around it decides to go ahead and put windmills in, that you could put windmills within 1,500 feet on all sides of them, or wherever, which in fact would almost make their house unlivable, and the value of their house would go down tremendously because of that. I mean, living conditions, when I took over, I signed an oath for taking care of the health and welfare in Nemaha County, and that's something I kind of treasure. I'd hate to see somebody that's built a $400,000 home or a $150,000 home, don't matter. They built their own home for them to live in, that they're going to be enforced, evicted by windmills.
So I can, Mark, just please step in if you want.
Excuse me.
So, I think the first thing I'd say to that would be, we now have 7 projects that are operating in Kansas. So my first response to be with that, you know, a lot of people will say, hey, look at this study on property values. I would go, you know, take one step more and say, go speak to landowners, both participating and non-participating in those areas, and ask them, you know, what they've seen, you know, how they feel about, what their personal opinion is about living near the turbines. I think that's the best way to do it, is the first-hand account. And kind of going into, do you think that's a good distance away? I would approach that from 2 different angles. One, when we go and we site our turbines and we come to a landowner, we actually have to present them the location of the specific turbine, letting them know fairwell where we intend to place it, and they actually have to sign off on that. So landowners will know what the impact on their neighbors will be. And even beyond that, before we even go to these landowners, it's in our best interest to not surround a home with turbines. You know, that's the last thing I want to do is, you know, receive a phone call from, you know, either one of y'all or an angry landowner saying, hey, you intend to place these turbines all around my home. I don't find this to be livable. You know, why are you doing this to me? That's not something we really want to do, and that's something that we really try to avoid. I think that's better for everyone. And kind of, we spoke with Galen too, and going back to the other comment on are these things in writing, there's other ways to do it other than just the agreement with the landowner, between ourselves and the landowner. You know, there's a development agreement, there's things of that nature. You know, and those are items that we spoke with Galen about, you know, and we can go into more detail. But really, it's not just a situation of, you know, that person with 5 acres is going to get completely surrounded by turbines. There's multiple things that have to happen before that, you know, would ever be the case. And every step along the way, I mean, we try to avoid that at all costs.
As a practical matter, with regards to these other projects you have, what's the closest you have placed a windmill to a non-participating residence?
1,400 feet.
Okay, so you have actually gotten up to that 1,400?
Yes.
Okay.
And that guy's happy about it? There's no problems.
I mean, yeah, that's...
Is that common, or is it that just...
No, it's fairly common, and the thing is, it is, I mean, I understand, you know, change is scary. I understand, you know, the idea of something new being, you know, near your homes. We're sensitive to that, and that's why we try not to do that. But to be honest, what we found is, you know, once they go up, they become part of the environment. I mean, it's kind of, that's how people, from what we've seen, again, this isn't me, this is just from what I've spoken to people about. And that's their firsthand, you know, experience. Other people might have a different experience, but I can only speak to what I've, you know, met with people about.
Right now, and that's not my experience. That's a long ways from 1,400 feet. So, yeah. I mean, and the landscape is really nice as long as all the lights aren't blinking, but when they're all blinking, they're not just a tremendous addition to my backyard right now, and that's, but I'm okay with that at that level. I mean, I'm not so far from it, but I disagree that 1,400 feet would be something where a person would live there and say that they're, I find that hard to imagine, but could be.
And maybe I can add some color. I'm Mark Trumbar. I'm with NextEra Energy, and Spencer invited me to come along. I've been working in Kansas almost 10 years now. I've been a part of the developments in Ness County and down in Ford, and you know, we don't place turbines 1,400 feet away from houses and just call that the minimum. You know, we try to do better than that. We try to set back from houses greater than 1,400 feet. I'm thinking of instances where, you know, we've had houses in those areas that we just simply couldn't set back far enough. If you start drawing circles around every house, you start to limit the area that some landowners have. It's a balancing of property rights, you know. But we do try to set them back a greater distance of 1,400 feet. But at a minimum, if we just absolutely work with the landowner, and this is about the only corner of his quarter section that he owns, that we can place a turbine, then we obviously, you know, would want to place that turbine there. I've been a part of our team for quite some time, and we've worked in population areas of greater population than Kansas. And have been successful with placing wind farms in those areas. We have to be conscious of neighbors, and we do that. And we're careful about where we place a turbine, not only just for sound, but also for shadow. And if you start limiting the areas that you can place a turbine, sometimes you eliminate a farm or a larger landowner's ability to place a turbine because you're not able to work with the shadow flicker, because you got to move that turbine in order to avoid the houses with shadow flickers. So that's in very populous areas. When I say very populous, we're talking about densities of houses like 5 per section. You know, those sections are pretty tough to find areas that you're not going to impact with shadow. Sound generally isn't an issue. It's you know, it's a setback issue when you have, you know, to draw a greater setback than 1,400 feet and try to make a larger landowner have the ability to have a turbine.
And I think too also, I mean, going back to, obviously we try, you know, to do what we can so that there is the greatest setback as possible from the non-participating landowners and homeowners. But I think too, I mean, we're not just coming in here and building this on ground that we own or just coming in with eminent domain. We're doing neither. We're coming in here, we're partnering with landowners. And I would say, Mark, now you can help me out with this number. How many participating landowners do we have?
I don't know the actual number. It's approaching 100,000 acres right now. That's all. I mean, of either side of the committed landowners or both sides. So I don't know actually what the number of different agreements is.
To complete this project, you need how many acres?
About that.
About
Or about that.
100,000.
And how many of these acres are inside the footprint? The first original footprint.
A big portion of them, but I'd have to
No,
get you that.
that's,
I don't know the number yet.
I think we need to move it.
Here's what they have, all them.
So it'd be kind of nice to have a
They
map
don't
to
have
show
that.
who is in and who's not in.
Right.
We can make that, I guess.
There's 3 townships that do not have signed leases. Now, I don't know if that's just with you guys next area or not, but from there's 3 townships that do not have leases yet in Nemaha County.
And that, to clarify that, that's considering all active leases by any company. So all
Yeah.
17 townships have active leases in it currently, at least as reported to the Register of Deeds. 3 in the far northwest corner do not.
And the active leases, I presume, are not all with NextEra?
Not all of NextEra.
Okay.
So it'd be, well, 4 entities, let's see, 3 entities, Invenergy, and then the 2 different entities that NextEra operates under in Nemaha County, Boulevard Associates and Soldier Creek Wind.
Okay.
And I personally hope that we can work with NextEra to somehow get it in writing that we can protect our non-participating landowners. I have no problem if someone as a landowner wants windmills, if they're leasing their land and they agree to put in a windmill 1,500 feet from their house, that's their issue. But to put it next to their neighbor's house, who happens to have a house right on their property line, you know, I have an issue there, you know, mainly because, you know, people live in Nemaha County for a reason, and we hope that we can continue providing a reason for them to live here. We don't want to chase them out. We have a hard enough time getting people and jobs in Nemaha County without that. And as we've told you before, you know, the businesses we've got, we need to protect. We don't want losing people that employ, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40 people because of the fact that they can't do that anymore. But the prohibiting, if there's a way, and I don't know, how would we as a county approach trying to protect our non-participating people? Is there some way that your people can work with us to help us with that decision? Or are you willing to, or do we need to go to other issues?
No, there's multiple ways to address it, and I would say we are willing to do so.
Okay.
And Spencer, earlier today, we talked about in your conditional use permit, in Pratt Wind project, you have a 2,500 foot setback.
Right.
Correct? And that's recent, that's January of this year. You guys don't know this yet, I don't think, because that's not one we had before. When we were talking Pratt County, I was thinking it was the Nessie project, which is older, right? But there's a newer project in Pratt County that does have a 2,500 foot setback and a conditional use permit with NextEra. So RK's going to get that, so you'll have a chance to look at that and kind of give you some basis. And you said, what was the other memorandum? Explain that, would you,
Yeah.
Spencer?
So that is just a, basically a statement on our part, per the specific project, holding us to specific, rules and guidelines for the project. That makes us, gives us a playbook, that's why we like it, because we know the rules that we need to follow. And also it helps the county out as well, because you know that, we're following specific guidelines pursuant to our specific location where the project is. So it protects, ourselves, we know the rules we need to play by. At the same time, it protects any non-participating landowner by, whatever, distances or other items that the county may feel that are specifically important. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the dynamic you have here in the county is that you've got several companies that are interested in the wind resource that you have here, is that, for us to be here today and stepping up and saying, we want to work with the county and to impose a set of conditions or rules that we will abide by, and we memorialize that with the county, I would hope that that would push the bar up for the other developers in the county to do the same. And, we would expect a level playing field. We don't necessarily, it's not guaranteed, but we as a development, we as developers, we know what our parameters need to be, and we're willing to step up and make that commitment to the county to move forward.
So the memorandum, is it we're gonna get a copy, right?
Right.
A draft?
Yep.
So legal document or just an agreement, informal agreement? Which is it?
It can take on the form of whatever your county attorney feels is appropriate. I think, once we go on record saying we're going to do something, we better dang well do it, and if we don't, then we're going to be held accountable. And so a memorialization at the county level, maybe some sort of an agreement with the county that is executed by the county, that would be fine. But it can be just as easy as a memo that we issue to you guys saying, we will abide by these rules.
Signed memo.
Signed memo, yeah.
And Spencer, can you clarify for everyone here what you told me about the applying to that project, this memorandum of understanding, what it is?
Right. So that would be per the specific project, and I think the rules in that document would be based around two factors. One, the density of homes per section, and then the density of turbines per section. I think those are the two key items that really addresses all issues and concerns that people bring up. It's how many homes are being affected, and how many turbines are there that are really affecting these homes. Because you could have kind of higher of those two factors, and those would be two different effects, right? If you don't have many homes, if you've got a lot of turbines, you've got one home per section, but that one home is surrounded, that's not a good day. But again, if you have 10 homes per section, and only a couple turbines, and you almost feel the same effects. So I would say any document that we would have with the county, I think it should be built around those two factors. Homes per section and turbines per section. Just an average number based on the project area. Mark, you kind of want to add to?
Yeah, I think you can see that the changes within our industry are that the turbines have, we're able to generate more electricity with fewer turbines. And this is pretty evident. If you ever get down by west of Dodge City on 56, driving down towards Montezuma, between Ensign and Montezuma there, you'll see the tail of the industry, how it's evolved. Okay, I did a project on the far side of Ensign, or on the eastern part of the 56, closer to Dodge City. Those turbines are a lot bigger, but then you go closer towards Montezuma, the turbines are a lot smaller. Okay, so
closer together.
The density is amazing. If we were to try to do a project using those small turbines right now, it would be, I think, a tragedy to the landscape. And from the standpoint that now we can place fewer things in the landscape, which I think is a much more palatable situation. If we were to try to put in 10 turbines in a section, that gets to be pretty chaotic, I think. So the industry has matured, and we can do as much or more with less, so to speak.
And to continue that, we talked a little bit about the underground infrastructure. It requires, your major investment is more buried cable.
Right.
But it doesn't prohibit the project, or you wouldn't have done a 2,500-foot setback in Pratt.
Right.
Right?
I mean, it
I want-
obviously,
I want
yeah, it obviously
participating landowners
affects
to understand.
the project, and, you know, there's losses and
Yes.
things like that,
I
but.
get that.
Right,
But you just put bigger conductors, and it costs a little more money, and you don't have the losses.
right.
It's simple physics.
I mean, I think the figure, I mean, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, that I would like to see would be how large of a setback can you have with non-participating landowners and yet still have a successful project? And I know that it's gonna be up to engineering and once they place other windows and everything else, but get that as high as it possibly can be, or put a waiver provision where a non-participating landowner can agree to less than that if they sign an agreement with NextEra. So there's an agreement with them as well, so they're compensated for having one closer than that amount.
Right.
But I'd love to see that figure, to see where we're at as far as setbacks go. Because obviously, I think there are gonna be a lot of folks upset with 1,400 feet if there's one within 1,400 feet. So if you can get that up as high as you possibly can and still have a successful project, that might keep everybody happy.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, and we have the ability to model that both ways. We can show what we call the receptors or the houses,
Yeah.
and then draw 100 feet around those houses and show you what the available land would be with that. And we could even grow that circle or shrink that circle, or circles around those houses, just to show you what the available land would be. And then that really drives a lot of the discussion, is how much of the land you chew up with the
Yeah.
setbacks and the availability to properly place a wind turbine so it's not offensive.
And we're getting there too, because Galen and I talked about this as well. It was, you know, now, and Mark, you know, talked about how much land we had, and we're pretty much, you know, we're almost there with, you know, being completely done with our land effort. So we've got a project, we've got our turbines. Now it's the process of what's the best possible project. Kind of optimizing the arrays, that's the industry jargon we use, but essentially it's just, we know what land we have, let's, you know, and our engineering department takes it and moves the turbine according to the best resource. Once we have that, then we start pulling the levers. Like you said, how far out can we go from non-participating homes, you know, before we're really, you know, changing the face of the project. And the same items are included when we get to the point where we can say what's, you know, our best project, where we can start looking at things like setbacks from, you know, individuals and, you know, different businesses. That's when we, you know, approach those issues.
These, according to some deals that have seen, like coal has cost $3, the state of Kansas, cost them like $3 per kilowatt. Wind cost them $14 per kilowatt. But yet K-State is getting their energy at half cost because it's coming from wind. Is this all incentives of the state that they're giving you guys over coal and that, or is there figures out there that say, okay, here's how much the average kilowatt cost per in Kansas?
Yeah. So I can speak to this because this is I think I showed you the article a couple months ago that Westar passed their new tariff, and they're actually using Soldier Creek for that new tariff. And essentially what that is because the energy that wind can produce now in a place like Kansas that has a lot of wind is the cheapest energy actually available now. And this is now, and this is specific to Kansas. And they actually passed the new tariff rate at 1.8 cents, which is extremely cheap. And the goal there is, by being able to offer that cheap energy, then they're going to be able to attract commercial and industrial customers to Kansas, knowing that, hey, I can come to Kansas, and as a customer, I can sign up with Westar, get my energy from, you know, Kansas wind energy, and also get my energy from a cheap resource. So those are the two main factors. That's why you see K-State signed on, Washburn signed on, you know, Wichita, I think, too. And that's the reason they're able to, one, claim that, hey, we're getting our energy from Kansas wind, and two, it's cheap.
Well, there are some pros and cons, and like I said, some of the good part of this is the fact that we can extract energy from this project in the state of Kansas, where, you know, I'm tickled to death that you're not taking it to New Jersey or wherever. You know, that part would make it even more tough. It'd be a tougher situation than we got now. But like I said, we do have a lot of resistance, but again, we've got a lot of support too, as Mark said. You know, so We've got pros and cons. Like I said, I just hope that we can, and I know that you say, Mark, that you can do this, but it's more of, will you do this? You know, I understand the things that come and go, but that don't make Dwayne or anybody else feel any more comfortable sitting there. And as you move this footprint, the original footprint, my original feeling was I was pretty familiar with the area. Very low population in that area. You know, I can understand why you picked that area. Now, you moved up into some pretty populated areas. And of course it goes within, what, a mile of Centralia, which I think is awful close to a city, you know.
The closest would be is 2 miles.
Centralia.
Around Corning, Golf, all the towns is 2 miles.
Yeah, but Centralia, it goes right,
it's still
right
2
along.
miles. Yeah, it is. It's 2 miles east.
Is it 2 miles east? Okay, I was thinking it was closer than that, but.
We're set back off that.
Does NextEra have any ground leased within that area, within 2 miles of Centralia or Corning?
Someone's parcel may have, I mean, Mark, you can probably speak to that more.
I guarantee that we do. I mean, but if they said, hey, sign it all up, if they have land outside, you know, and land inside, we signed it up.
So
Yeah.
if you have land leased within those boundaries, theoretically, there could be.
No, because our setback requirements would be from Centralia. So what he's saying is even though the parcel.
They're using a
overlaps-
2 mile radius,
Okay.
Dwayne, from the
Yeah.
center of town. I assume the center of
Yeah, so
town.
that's
Yeah.
And
Roughly.
Corning would be a good example because they have built, and you can drive around Corning, there's how many new houses that have been built there and the amount of money that has been built and the people have stuck into that community. We definitely don't want something like this to come out there and sit right on the edge of number 9 highway.
And we had our open house down in Corning for that reason, just to
Okay.
be down in that community. So we did see those homes. And that's why we have that setback. And to what you said before, I mean, we will get you those documents where, you know, that you can, as a county, can look at, hey, you know, what tools do we have, or, you know, what devices do we have that we can hold NextEra accountable, right? And start addressing those issues that are being raised by those with concerns. Because I think, you know, a lot of it's just kind of being unsure, not knowing what we're going to do. And if something is in writing with the county, then you kind of get rid of that, you know, the big question mark is what are we doing, right? And obviously there are some, whether, you know, wind turbine is 2,000 feet or 2 miles, you know, some people just don't like it, and I'll never argue with them on that. I'll never try to convince someone otherwise, but I think having some documentation will protect everybody.
Well, and that's true. There is a lot of people that just, we like the open landscape, and I understand that. But I also understand change. You know, I was in business for 40 years and the amount of change that I've went through, but some of it was good, some was bad. But I can use 36 Highway as an example, you know, from Hiawatha to St. Joe. Took a lot of prime land away and split some families terribly. Caused a lot of major problems. But is it a benefit? I don't think anybody in this room would say that when they get on 36 Highway and go to St. Joe that they don't enjoy the drive.
But if it affected you, that's when it changed.
That's when it changed, and it
so I
caused some,
understand that too.
and there's still people, I mean, tell you, they are
Well, we're
definitely,
gonna do the best we can, and I think that is one reason why we're trying to get this other fella, Neil, involved. He understands both sides. And I
we
think,
just want it for our personal feeling and for our taxpayers.
Well, and
Yeah.
the other reason is, you know, we can't think just of the now. This is what it's gonna happen in the next year or two. We have to think 20 years down the road, which is where the decommissioning agreement comes into play.
Sure.
And I think Mr. Neal understands all the things we need to be looking out for.
and one thing about
that
it, you start putting those up, you eliminate all the new houses in that area.
That's right.
I mean, that would be my take on it. If you start putting towers up, nobody's gonna build with them.
Do you argue with that?
Well, what I mean is, you know, that's looking in the future too.
Yeah.
It's not very populated, it's probably not gonna happen, but there is certain instances where My son may wanna build wherever, well, if you put those towers, he's not gonna build there no more. I mean, it's gonna go somewhere else probably, so there's pros and, I think it comes back to that, pros and cons. Now, where are we gonna get in the middle?
Can he do that even without their permission anyway?
Well, that's another, you're probably right with the, if that was leased ground, but I'm talking about if it wasn't leased ground and there's a whole bunch of them right here and he's gonna build right here, he's probably not gonna wanna look at them, he's gonna go somewhere. That's my personal opinion, that's not my professional.
So I have a question, Dennis, regarding your comments about the contrast between the cost of electricity between coal-fired production versus wind. And then you made the comment that now wind energy is so much cheaper. What changed?
Technology. Technology got much, much better. Not only in the turbine itself, but also the placement of the individual turbines. Knowing how to capture the wind energy in the most efficient way.
And then, Dwayne, you understand that they're getting incentivized. 14 cents, $14 per kilowatt, where coal's only getting 3.
Well,
you know, it's kind of like if we want to keep, well, we can use CR or somebody. If we wanted to keep them in our city, the only way we can do it is to give them more money than say, listen, we want you here, we want to keep you here, rather than kick them out and then try and bring a new company in and give them the tax benefits. You know, it's kind of, I think, the same situation. That's why I was asking, what is the total cost? This is what Kansas is paying per kilowatt. They're giving wind energy a lot more than they was giving coal. My feeling is why don't they give coal more, you know, but.
Well, that's my point. So the only, it isn't as if the only influence in that number changing, if those numbers that you provided were accurate, the only component of that changing drastically isn't just efficiency, is it, or is it?
That PTC that you're talking about, it's not new. It's been around for a while, so even some of the older projects. Yeah, but some of the projects that have, you know, they used to be more expensive. The changing factor, what has changed isn't the fact that PTC has changed, that's been around. It's that technology. That's what's the changing factor here. That's how it's gotten so cheap.
And realistically, with 8 years under the Obama administration, they put so many regulations on clean coal that killed the coal industry, and yet they incentivized solar, wind, I mean, non-fossil fuel energy with enough tax credits that it made that worthwhile.
So, well, not to get too in the weeds, but it's gas. The heat rate of gas, you know, dropped dramatically too, and that's really what set the market rates. So it's really gas is kind of in what's been lethal to coal. Yeah. So now gas across the country, yeah, natural gas has just dropped, and that's really setting the market rate, and it's just been killing, you know, those coal plants that can't power up and down, right? So that's really, you know.
So is that a given that those incentives will continue indefinitely?
No, no. And I think the incentives first came on and kind of encouraged an industry to grow, like with solar. And now, like I mentioned, the technology's gotten a lot better, where in a place like Kansas, again, I'm not going to speak to other locations around the country, around the world, but in a place like Kansas, unsubsidized wind is still going to be extremely cheap because you have a place like Kansas with a lot of wind. I'm not going to speak to other parts, you know, people that want to put them off, you know, the coast of New England or whatever. I'm not going to talk about that. But I know where we are, Kansas, Nebraska, this region, I mean, we all know it's super windy, and it'll be a cheap form of energy without BTCs. BTCs kind of just kickstarted the whole thing and drove the initial investment, and now it's to the point where even without the PTCs, it's still economic and competitive.
I think you told me, Spencer, and refresh my memory, that any given public electric utility today is not required by federal law to produce X amount via non-renewable. Is that correct?
Kansas, yeah. There's no renewable portfolio standard in Kansas. There's no one has to go out. I think in California, I think they have a storage. They have to go build energy storage. There's some other mandate, but in Kansas, there's no RPS, renewable portfolio standard.
Did there used to be?
I think there was at one point a few years ago.
Sebelius there was.
And then it's just, yeah, and then it got overbuilt, and it's like, all right, and all the utilities had more than now it's Westar and Winout and built this, got this project and participated in it only because on the price alone. That was it.
So
There was
Kansas,
nothing out of Topeka telling them that they needed to go, get wind or anything like that.
I mean, California, forget about them. Not Kansas is not a standalone state in this respect.
Right.
They're not the only ones.
Right.
Okay.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
I
States-
misunderstood.
I'll just
Thank
put
you.
it this, states like California still have those, other states, like the market decide, let their utilities
Right,
decide,
okay.
and that's the state.
Go ahead.
So I've got another question. Earlier, when you were talking about, each of you at different times were speaking about the desire to be sensitive to homeowners, non-participating homeowners in particular. And I appreciate that because that potentially can affect me with regard to how close the tower may sit to my house. Here a couple of weeks ago, there was a gentleman here that, if I remember correctly, and this is secondhand, but if I remember correctly, he referenced the fact that he was told by a NextEra rep that if they wanted to, they could put a tower at the end of his runway. That concerns me a great deal.
It concerns me too. I would say it was.
Have you looked into that?
Yeah, I have. Said that was an extremely inappropriate comment, and I think he was also speaking way out of line. I don't think anybody should speak to anybody like that, especially anybody from our company. Should not come into a county like this and say something like that. So for that, I apologize. I apologized then, and I'm apologizing then now.
Have you talked to?
Yes.
You have.
Yeah.
You talked to the owner of the runway.
I have before. I mentioned last time we were here, and I spoke to him. Kind of what I said. We're in the point now where we're trying to design our best project, and once I do that, once I have that in my hands, then I can go and have the conversation with that individual, because I know he has his concerns. He expressed that very early on. We had our open house here in Sabetha. I spoke to him personally. I know Mark has been speaking to him personally as well, and that's a conversation I want to have with him, kind of one-on-one. Like, hey, this is our situation, and I'm sure he'd like to get his attorneys involved. But at the same time, I've been speaking to him, for some time now. I haven't spoken to him recently, because there's a lot of work to do on our end before I can go to him and kind of show what we had in mind.
And how does this work on your end and proceed? So we have to probably get the gentleman here to agree with some form of an agreement with you before you get to a point where you're going to come tell us how far we're going to have a turbine from our residence. So, but at some point, that'd be a point of no return. I mean, you're not going to turn around and say, well, sorry, Doug, you're going to have one across the roof from your house, and you just get used to it and live from there. Because, I mean, once you move on, I deal with the windmill. I have no way of being compensated for that, or, I mean,
You're saying once
there's no protection for me, is what I'm
once
saying.
it gets built, or when you say
Well, yeah,
when it
some-
comes to the county?
Right, but obviously, once it gets
Right,
built, I don't,
right.
but at some point during this timeline, that happens, it becomes something that's gonna happen, and then you guys are talking about establishing a map or some sort of, I'm saying, to make it to where it's
Right.
doable for everybody. When do you see that happening, I guess is my question. When do you see, like, your engineers coming up with this?
So we'll be finishing our work around Christmas. So in the new year is when we begin approaching landowners. And that's not only the ones that are participating, we would be approaching anyone living near, or we'd be citing it with the offer of at least a participation agreement. And then, of course, there's other avenues where if someone just doesn't want it, then of course we can offer other things, when, it's a couple trees or something like that, to at least make an offer, hey, we understand this is closer than you'd like, we'll have that conversation as well. And I think Mark and his team and ourselves as well, we're just as happy to speak to someone who, isn't happy about the project, doesn't want it, but they just want to express their opinion or just ask questions. We're always open to having those discussions as well. you know.
But I have no recourse for that unless these guys protect us.
Well, I mean, say we agree to a 2,500-foot setback and they want to build one 2,525 feet from your residence. The only recourse you would have is to obtain legal representation, file some sort of nuisance lawsuit or something along those lines against NextEra.
Right, but before it got to that point, I mean, that's what you would want to do.
Before it got to that point, I would say, come speak to us, and then, you know, like a participation agreement. That would get the conversation started. And then other than that, it would be whatever agreement we entered into with the county as far as having something in writing, basically saying we're held to certain, you know, setbacks. So that's the protection, and then anything beyond that, I would say, you know, come to us, you know, talk to us, and of course, the final avenue would be what you mentioned.
Yeah.
So Spencer, to clarify, let's say, can I use you, Doug, for my example? So if Doug's that non-participating landowner, or homeowner, we'll say, and you would offer him a participation agreement, would it be the same agreement as you offer any other landowner?
It would, if you get, whether you get a turbine or not, those are the two different options.
The rest of the language would be essentially the same?
Yeah.
So then, Doug, you would be agreeing to waive or provide easement for wind, noise, vibration, flicker, all those things, correct?
Right.
You would convert Doug into a participant with its restrictions on him ever complaining about those things.
Right. Well, okay, for the complaining part, that we've mentioned this before, whether someone has anything good or bad to say about us, just, I mean, this day and age with social media or anything, we can't control that.
Well, I don't mean it that way.
Probably don't have the right to file any suit.
Right, yeah.
He's granting you easement, is all, I'm just reading from the agreement here, okay. And any other effects. So I just want to clarify about that, to make sure I understood what you meant by that statement.
Right.
Do any of your confidentiality clauses in the contract prevent a given participant who signed the contract from legally saying anything negative?
I don't believe there's anything that prevents them from taking up a lawsuit or whatever else. They can do that if they need to. I mean, there's, you know, anybody can hire an attorney, right? I mean,
just take money.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, there isn't anything in there that I think prohibits them from taking up an action against anybody, or including ourselves.
Well, what we want to do is keep people from being in that situation.
Right.
And that's where I hope that the communications and the lines would keep open, especially like one of our problems would be Glen Heinen with the airport. I would hope that, and I really wouldn't mind, you know, I mean, even though you're not prepared, I think you need to talk to him just to keep communications going, to say, okay, listen, you know, we understand your problem, we're taking it under advisement, you know, we're doing what we can do here. Another thing, you know, of course, you, Invenergy, bought the green line. Well, that line's liable to go right down just South Seneca here, all the way across. Coming probably right through your place, Roger, pretty close, ain't it? But anyway, is that gonna cause problems? Is, you know, I mean, there's some issues with that stuff that we've been fighting for, what, 4 years? Seems like.
Yeah, I mean.
But like I said, we hope, we need to keep the communication lines open.
Agreed. And we were a little surprised that, you know, I think after multiple attempts of someone trying to make the grain belt work, that someone decided to try again.
Well, I think Missouri's finally gotten to where they have gotten some agreement, but that's neither here nor there. That's not our,
right.
We're into that, but I do want to say that I've been to several meetings, and Tim and Gary, you can correct me, but all the meetings I've been to, I commend our taxpayers and the people that have come to our meetings about presenting their case, staying calm. You know, there could be a lot of issues that come forth, and that don't help anybody. You know, we want to keep calm and keep communication going, and not walk out on things. Just, you know, that's my thought for yous especially, you know, because you're the ones that's gonna be up against it. But the other one we're up against is, you know, they tell us to ditch this resolution. Well, I don't know what that will do. Nobody's really in a position to tell us that. Outside of the it would take away your lifetime, and then you could go to the 10-year, which I don't know what we have over that 10-year thing.
Right.
But, which, like I said, you know, we want to keep the employees we got, and like Glenn got 41 employees and he's wanting to expand. I hate to stop him.
Absolutely.
You know, I really do.
Speaking of Glenn again, and I'm just not clear on this, I guess. So there's been a lot of talk about keeping the channels of communication open and communicating. You mentioned that you had been...
I haven't spoken in a while now. And Mark's a pilot, so I thought, you know, he might be the best individual to speak with him. But obviously, you know, like you stated, we will...
So you can hear.
Be in more, you know, constant communication with him. But I mean, beyond that, I mean, to be completely honest, I think, you know, him as an individual, I think that's a conversation between us, you know, the two of us. I don't want to, you know, that's his business. I don't want to speak about anybody who's not currently, you know, sitting in the room. So it's okay. I'd rather not talk about him. I mean, if that's,
well,
I don't want to get personal about somebody who's
not.
not.
I understand that, and I don't, it's not necessarily the ideal scenario for me either, but for me, it's the only known quantity, known example. And if he indicated, and again, this is what I heard, I've never spoken with him personally about this, but he indicated that he hasn't heard anything for a couple of months, and that was a meeting, what, a couple of weeks ago. And so if that's the case with him, again, that doesn't bode very well for me as a homeowner. If he is a business owner, if next year I won't reciprocate with him and try and negotiate that. And I just, he's a business, it seems to me that one component of that relies heavily on his runway. And is it not as simple as just telling him, asking him what he needs, and telling you'll avoid that?
Well, I think Glenn has already provided you guys with what his request, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
See, I'm looking.
And they've got the same information.
Right.
I'm trying to look through his eyes and see, okay, so how's this going to look if this is me just trying to protect my home at a reasonable distance.
But and just to step in here, I don't think you're really in a position to start working on this until you have the engineering plan at your disposal.
Right. And we have spoken to him, it hasn't been a couple months. We've spoken to him, you know, before that. I will say, you know, there's certain reasons why, you know, I haven't reached out to him yet. You know, I'm not ready. There's other reasons, or if someone has representation and I don't, you know what I mean, there's, you kind of get put into a compromised position. But again, going back, I mean, that's his business, this is our business. I think that conversation is more appropriate between the two of us. But as far as you're concerned, you know, you're worried, hey, what if you come to us and say, you intend to site this turbine a lot closer to my ground than I'd prefer? You're worried you're going to call one of us and you're not going to get a call back, right? That's,
well,
and I
to
do,
some degree.
right.
Ultimately, I'm worried that
Why would you?
while I'm sitting there complaining about it, that a tower is going to go in across the road or right next to me.
Well, I would say, I mean,
turbine.
this situation right here is reason enough why I would want to call you back. I think the best way for settles, I mean, sorry, Brad, but I think things are best settled, you know, when people just come to an agreement on their own. I think that's, you know, much better before the county has to get involved or, you know, anybody's attorney. So that's our incentive. We would much rather come to a point where you're happy with us, or at least happier than if you wouldn't have come to us.
response.
You understand, I don't feel like I have much leverage when it comes to negotiating with you, though.
Right.
And therefore, you may not think it's appropriate to discuss it here, but this is more than a plausible scenario. This is a real scenario, which is why I've latched my teeth onto it. It concerns me a great deal. You may not want to discuss it here, but I think it's very appropriate.
Well,
to
Glenn
discuss
asked to discuss it here a week ago and got no response. I'm just kidding. Glenn's there, right there, where Dwayne is sitting, and told you guys that it had been 60 days. And he then, I believe he contacted you commissioners with another communication, correct? Since then, is that right, Dennis?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think Glenn's done everything he should have done. And he's our local homegrown business. Come on,
Does Glenn have legal representation already?
Yes.
Yes.
It's very possible his attorney may have
No.
instructed their attorneys.
I
Don't think so.
I think it's been silent.
Well, I could be wrong, but I don't think that Heinen's sought counsel until you guys weren't communicating with them.
I think that's right.
I mean, I could be wrong, I don't want to speak for
Right,
them.
exactly.
And I'm just saying possible because.
See, that's where he comes in, like he's saying, though, we're all saying, well, do we know, we don't know, because Glenn's not sitting here, so I agree with Spencer on that. Well, I don't think we need to hash that deal out. That's between them and them. If you got a problem with what you're doing, then I think you need to talk to them. And I don't think there's a problem. Why don't you talk to them? Call them. Go down Main Street and have a meeting set up with one of those guys and go one-on-one with them.
Well, I'm all for that too, and I'll talk to you all you want, but what it comes down to is they can, what I'm
I
getting at,
understand.
yeah, you can tell me, hey Doug, we're not gonna set it within 25 miles of your house. Great, I'll go home and everything's all fuzzy. Well, that's not,
But here
you
again,
come put it across the road from me, what am I gonna say? Hey,
we
you
got a
told
guy
me-
from Kansas City that we're gonna have represent us now.
Right.
And I think that's where we're at.
I hope- yeah,
think,
right, that's
I
what I'm
think
saying.
right now, we're getting into a big discussion here that's going nowhere. We need to get him on board. He is our representation, as is Brad. They're gonna work together. He's coming here every Monday. I think we could have a good discussion then. Right now, we're
Yeah, that's,
Well, until they get their engineering plan, we're kind of just doing a lot
right,
of
but we
what
still
is-
got some things to work
that's
out.
what I'm saying.
Exactly,
So you
but-
go do all this money to do this engineering plan, I'm assuming that you think it's already all done. So you've got to, I mean, that's what I'm getting at. So when I'm talking about our timeline here, where you don't go backwards is you get your engineering, you've got your engineering, okay, everything's all going, so now we put this here, we still, when do I miss the conversation is what I'm getting at. You know, we're talking about having this conversation. When is it all of a sudden, hey Doug, you should have been at the meeting last week because we talked about that then.
Yeah.
You're already out and now you're gonna have a wind turbine across the road from your house. That's my concern.
Tim, with regard to your comments before, I don't feel like I have enough leverage to negotiate with NextEra Energy. That's where I.
Nor do
And
we.
then that's where I'm coming back to you and saying, I know, but that's where I'm coming back and saying, that's why we have this person on board coming in next week. Come in next week, then you'll have something to relate to him with. Okay, see what I'm saying? We're sitting back here listening to it, and it sounds great, but if that's all we did at our meeting, we're not going anywhere. I think we need to get him on board, then we can progress along a lot
We
better.
want to make a good educated.
Yes. And I understand your concerns,
For all people.
but I don't think we're getting anywhere today.
One thing.
You know what I mean?
That I wanted
It's
to
repetitious.
confirm.
Every week, it's the same thing over and over again.
Well, but I hear this message coming from NextEra that we want to work with everyone. But this is one example that I have some insight into, and
Right.
it's arm's length insight, mind you, and that doesn't appear to be the case. I just, and if I'm wrong about that assessment, straighten me out. I'd be the
No,
most
I mean,
pleased
the
person here.
first and only time I've met with him in person was at the open house in Sabetha. Since then, that was passed along to other members of our team. Mark, like I said, is a pilot. You know, he was probably the best one to have that conversation, and he has spoken to Glenn multiple times, right? As far as the spacing between those, I mean, that's from Mark and Glenn, but I have said there has been communication, and we've received communication from representation. So that's kind of, you know, I don't want to go through a whole he said, she said business. I don't think that's right. But
I agree.
We've been doing our part.
Do you have any more open houses scheduled? Is there any more discussion with the public that you guys are looking for? Or is this kind of the format that we're in now, or what's the?
I think we could. You know, we haven't got our engineering plan done yet. You know, we're still working on the land acquisition process. You know, the transparency that comes when we get the plan, I think, is going to be very important. And the discussions that you're talking about, and I was going to make this comment, is that, you know, a lot of times landowners that are not participating don't want a turbine within, you know, 25 miles of them. That's not reasonable, okay? I mean, we all got to sit down and make this happen.
Right.
And so for you to come in and say, listen, I see where you got this. Is there any way that you can maybe move that back? Or even, here's my picture window that I look out every night. Could you move that turbine this way so that we could avoid that impact of my view out my window? You know, those are the kind of discussions we've got to have, you know? But we've run into landowners that have come in and said, you know, I just don't want them, you know, anywhere.
Right.
That's not gonna happen.
But my concern, and I think Dwayne's concern is the same, that this is all good, but when I say I don't want to look at that out my window, and you've already signed everything, and everybody's all good with everything, you don't care whether Doug Wertenberger tells you to move that $3 million turbine 25 feet this way because my internet won't work because I can't hit the tower, or, you know, I really have no, at that stage of the game, I'm thinking we're past the point of Doug having any kind of leverage to help help make my life better at all. You know?
Yeah, I will tell you that when we have increased setbacks, that reduces the ability for us to be flexible sometimes with moving turbines because of the constraints of other houses. It becomes a engineering, you know, nightmare some days to try to find a place to you know, move that to if there's all these constraints. I don't know the project well enough to know how much constraints we have. I think there's some differences in areas that we've got. So those are all discussions that I think we can have the more that we move closer to getting to the final design and all the land. So,
and here's, I mean, just looking at the big picture of it, these gentlemen have to make a decision at some point in time whether or not we're going to play along and go with this project, or they're going to try to kill it. And a lot of it depends on their ability to keep people happy, because if we have, I mean, a gym full of people who are upset about this versus just a handful who want to support this thing, what's that going to say to them? But if there are just a few people complaining about it because I don't want a windmill within a mile of my home, but yet there are a whole lot of people who are really want some windmills on their property because they're making some good money off of it, well, they're not going to kill the project because there are a few unhappy homeowners. So the more people who are happy with this and not griping about it, the easier it is for them to move forward with this project.
I don't know.
So they do have that incentive to keep people happy.
I don't know of anyone that wants to kill the project. I know of a number of people, myself included, that are concerned about
it.
Yeah.
And it's like
That's a good
a lot
thing,
of my,
a lot of, 100%, you hear that side of that, yes. I haven't really heard where, well, I ain't gonna say they don't want it. But yeah, concerned about how it's gonna be with me.
Well, me and my neighbor. I mean, I want, because there's a lot of people that don't take the time. I mean, there's guys that have jobs. They're welding right now, or they're doing whatever they're doing right now. I'm fortunate enough to have a flexible enough schedule that I'm able to be here and have this conversation, and hopefully on behalf of some of those people, because I think there's a ton of people who are extremely uneducated about how this all works.
Definitely.
And I think we've really got a responsibility to look.
I will back that up with Doug in that in the last 10 days, I've had as many people that have said, thank you for going to the meetings and speaking up, because I can't, or I'm afraid to. I've got neighbors that want to be here that are not here because they feel like they can't speak out against it because their neighbor's going to be upset, and I might be wanting to add on to my livestock facility, and I'm going to have permission from them at some point. And they're afraid to speak out.
Nobody likes us
because of
anyway,
those
so
things. And I will tell you, one of the things that makes me nervous about this whole deal, guys, is they're coming in here at the 11th hour. We're talking about $3 million wind turbines. I bought equipment from Doug 6 months in advance. That stuff is ordered. Those are wind turbines.
I don't think we're really coming in at the 11th hour.
And they're just beginning negotiations
for a while
on the hardcore things of this contract.
It takes a while for the sleeping beast to wake up, though, is the problem. Yeah, you've maybe been here for a while, but for those of us, this is kind of the 11th hour for us. I mean, it's kind of like it all of a sudden became real.
And that's one reason we're bringing in Mr. Needle, the attorney, because there's somebody who's not so much in the wind energy, but the energy water scale sort of process. He's very well versed, he's represented them. So he's somebody who is an expert in the field who can tell us what we need to be looking out for. And that's why we're bringing, now, and also that brings with it a warning. I don't plan on this negotiation process to be done in meetings like this. This is likely to be done between attorneys, because to start, because really, for us to start opening this up to negotiations and have everybody, it's not in the county's best interest, because NextEra is going to know exactly what we're doing. I mean, if you want to work out a divorce settlement, you're probably not going to do so in a room with your wife's divorce attorney. You're going to do so with your attorney so you can plan strategy that way. And we want to be able to plan strategy in executive session with our attorney when we're working out the finer details of these legal documents.
There's lots of concerns. Is the top of the list would be proximity of any given turbine to a non-participating landowner? Is that the top of the list?
I think it is.
I hear that the most, I think.
Sure, my life, you know, the way I'm going to live my life is going to be affected by this, and so are other people. And my value, right next to that, whether you have that as probably that.
Can
be.
Well, there's other concerns,
Yeah, right,
decommissioning and all that stuff, but aside from that, looking at that thing is
setbacks.
Right.
Setbacks is the top of the.
Which is going to affect the value of my home, that's what I look at. You know, setbacks are going to affect the value of my, for me to be able to resell my house out there in the middle of nowhere, which we put them out in the middle of nowhere for a reason. You know, I'm telling you, if I'd have known this 20 years ago, there's no way I'd have built that house out there. And that tax revenue that this county is getting would have not been in effect at this stage of the game.
Doug, explain, there may be people in the room that don't know where you live. I think you should explain that.
Yeah, I'm 1 mile from the Flatwater. I'm 1 mile from the closest. So I've got
Kansas.
11 or 12 or 14 of those things right in my back door. Now, and I'm not bad with that. It's not horrible. I'm not the guy sitting here saying I can't sleep. I mean, it's not horrible, and they're to an extent you get used to looking at them.
But they didn't talk to you.
Right, yeah.
But they didn't talk to you.
No, they're in Nebraska. I just happen to be a mile south of Nebraska. And I mean, that's the part of it that works. I mean, it's not horrible. It's not the end of the world. We're still okay. I've still got a house. In fact, I added on to it 4 years ago. And yeah, now we're at the stage now where I just don't want them any closer to my house because of the effects of what we've seen from where they're at now. That's what I'm saying.
I think you realize
Is it accurate to say you would be comfortable with a mile setback?
I would be, yeah.
Yeah,
I would be.
but you realize that's not plausible.
I don't know why that's not
Why is that not
plausible.
plausible?
I don't know why that's not
I
plausible.
can tell you why.
Why?
Is your project possible with a mile setback from?
Well, I know not everybody. Why can't you, if this is such a profitable deal,
Are you
why
the county attorney or are you representing NextEra?
I'm just pointing out some arguments here. I'm just trying to reveal the obvious that if you expect the county commissioners to negotiate a mile setback as part of this agreement, you said nobody wants to kill the project, that's killing the project.
I'm not sure why.
A 3,000 or 3,500 setback.
If you draw a mile diameter around your house.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you know how much ground that knocks out?
A lot.
That knocks out, you know, four and a half sections of ground.
Well, but
Yeah, 4.5 miles of ground gets wiped out.
I will speak up right off the bat on that. When you guys originally came in here, that original conditional use permit was for an area that is much smaller than the area that you've outlined since. And it's also tremendously smaller than the area in which you guys are all actively leasing ground.
Yeah.
So, and that's a huge point.
Getting back to trying to be reasonable with and to try to accommodate a project, a mile setback is something that would not work. I mean, that's why we're trying to be reasonable. If you came to us and said, you know, what could you do? And I'm going to tell you a mile would be just
3,000 or
extremely
3,500?
you know, impossible for us.
The setback that we-
I never did get that 2003.
Well,
You don't seem like an unreasonable man.
but no, I mean, I don't understand why that wouldn't be something that you guys could negotiate with each one of those people then. If everybody's in such a big favor of this crazy thing,
You shouldn't have any trouble.
there shouldn't be any trouble raising enough people saying, hey, Doug wants his a mile from his house. How about we only put ours 1,400 feet? Another thing about the 1,400 feet setback, is it not true that you are required to have safety equipment on, I've read in some documents, and I haven't done enough research on this and talked very much educated, but is it not true that some of the ocean requirements require us to be 1,400 feet from an operating wind turbine to have some form of safety equipment on? To be that close to, do your guys have to have safety equipment on to be that close to these things? I mean, if this setback, we're talking about 1,400 feet.
You're talking about hard hats, that type of stuff.
That's steel-toed shooters.
I'm not familiar with the.
Well, Vestas, the manufacturer of turbine, says 1,300 feet for their workers. That's their safety document that says.
Yeah, and my kids are going to be that close to one. I mean, just those types of things. It just seems like.
For us, it's 500 feet.
Yeah, I don't know the safety requirements, I'm not sure. But back to your question, it's like when we want to sit down and have a reasonable conversation about how far you want us to be back. You know, if you come in with the idea of a mile from your house, that's going to wipe out a lot of potential areas for wind turbines a mile away from you.
Mark, can I ask a question though? In the area, so Mark, you have to help with this, Mark, but in your area where you have a lot of 100,000 acres leased, those landowners are not going to want a mile setback. They're going to want the turbines. They're going to be, so how does it really restrict the project? If you have a lot of contiguous acres and the landowners, homeowners in that area are in favor, then the mile doesn't affect it. So I don't quite understand how it.
Because it draws a contract that even if they establish a 3,000 foot setback or a 1 mile setback, the participating landowners, it doesn't count for them because they've signed that contract.
Right, you don't have to honor it for them anyway.
So it's already in there. So obviously you can make the project go forward if the people actually want it.
We're talking about, let's say you have non-participants that are peppered through the project, and you start drawing circles around those non-participating landowners. You start to give more rights to, I think, those non-participating landowners than the participating landowners.
They're the ones being affected. The guy that's getting the check's not being affected.
You got a lot of landowners. You've got a lot of landowners that do not even live in the county. So they're absolutely not affected.
Again, talking about ownership of land and who has what, we're trying to be reasonable here.
Okay.
So let's sit down and have that conversation, but let's do it in a way that there's a fair and balanced way to look at this. We look at it from the standpoint of being able to do a project, and you looking at it from the standpoint of trying to get that turbine as far away from your house as possible.
Well, I think it just makes it more difficult for you guys. It doesn't make it more difficult for anybody else, because then you have to come in and actually negotiate with each one of those people. Whereas if that's not the case, you have no incentive to have any type of a conversation. You talk about these conversations, there's no incentive for you to have a conversation with me unless there's a large enough setback to make it to where you have to come to me, give me some type of a bargaining chip that I can say, okay, for $5,000 a year, you can put 1.25 miles from my house, or something of those, along those sorts.
I think for a reason for why we want to come to you and negotiate on something was what Brad pointed to earlier. I mean, the more people that show up in front of the commission, right, the more unhappy people, and people aren't satisfied with what we're doing, the setbacks we're providing, that's bad for us, right?
It's only bad for you until you get it put up. We're not going to know you, we're not going to see you, you'll never be part of our lives ever again once all these commissions are all done. I won't have your phone number, I have no way of it'll all be done. It's too late at that stage. That's what I'm saying. That's why I keep talking about this timeline. At some point, we're at the game too late. There's not enough people here. You know, if there was enough people here that knew all this, you'd have enough other people having the same conversation that I'm having with you.
You'll say that last one. I didn't hear
You
the
know,
last one, sorry.
if this were going to take enough time,
Right.
and we had enough time to organize enough people that had the same type of concerns as somebody like myself, that know these things are going to happen, that they're going to end up with these wind turbines in their backyard, there would be more people that would have be incentivized to come talk to you. It would make your project harder, and then therefore you would have to come have a conversation with me about where you were going to put those. I'm saying there's no reason for you to ever have a conversation with me once everything's all set up.
Well, I mean, when was the open house in Sabetha? I mean, we made ourselves very, very available when we had the open houses. We told everybody that we had the PPA. that was public knowledge, that was, that was, every news outlet in Kansas was running that story.
Right.
And I think since then, our contact information has been dispersed, and we have our office location, so I don't think we've ever not been available to have a conversation.
Spencer, I would tell you this, that the general populace, and help me, anybody in the room, anybody correct me, the general populace believes that this project is confined to 4 townships in the far south part of this county, and the bulk of the population of this county is well north of that.
Yeah.
So the reason that you don't get much attendance at your meetings is because most of us didn't think it affected us.
And we didn't have
That's
any.
exactly right. The northernmost point.
I'm saying do it again.
Yeah, okay.
South
No,
of
all
my
right,
house.
we'll do it again.
Yeah.
No, then that's okay.
So I just
Is
want
there-
to understand that.
Mark, is it? To your point before, I think, I can't remember exactly how you said it, you alluded to people that are non-participants, have not signed contracts, having more weight, carrying more weight, or having more say than those that signed contracts. That's not my desire whatsoever. I'd be good with equal representation.
Straight down balance. I appreciate that. That's really where we want to be at.
And just to clarify one point on the, when if you were to offer a guy like Doug a contract, what'd you call it?
Participation agreement.
Okay, participation agreement. And then Brad had mentioned that you could take legal action, et cetera, et cetera. If you do that, within that, it's not by jury though. It's not a jury trial. That's part of the waiver. Number 20.6 says waiver of jury trial. So just understand that you're not going to get a jury of your peers. You're going to be held in court somewhere. I don't know what the venue would be. Is the venue local?
Be district court, yeah.
District court or regional.
It usually spelled out in the agreement whether it be.
It doesn't say, it just says in the court of competent jurisdiction, so would that be here?
So it'd probably be in Nemont County District Court.
That'll be where they file.
It'll be a bench trial.
Yeah.
Right, just want to clarify that, so.
Okay, a couple of things. One question that I had, and like I said, as you push this footprint further north, you're getting into a lot more populated area. Is there advantage, when you get up into Doug's area and up and around Sabetha, there's a lot of population. Okay, is it true to say that you would want to lease all the land up there without ever having any intention of putting a windmill up so that Invenergy or some other company doesn't come in and put a bunch of windmills in there, that they're going to have to deal with somebody else besides you guys? Is there thought of that? I mean, would you lease a bunch of land just to keep competition away from you so that you don't get a bad name because Invenergy comes in or somebody else comes in and puts in a wind farm 2 miles from here, and you'd be fighting the same situation that they're fighting with here? See what I'm getting to? It's not necessarily just all NextEra. There's other companies out there that could come in and take their place immediately if they don't pursue getting this land leased. I don't know. I'm just wanting a question on that. And then, it's like I said, taxes, our population is in Sabetha and Seneca, the majority of it, and most of the people, and I'm gonna tell you, I meet them church, wherever, and they're all telling me that if there's any way you can lower our taxes, we're for it. Well, they have no idea what's going on. And I try and tell them, I said, you guys need to be more informed, because your nephews, your sons, your brothers, your cousins are going to be affected by this situation. You don't want to go in there with that attitude, as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, that's some of the things we're up against in a county like ours, where we got, half the population in the cities. And of course, a lot of people in the cities own the land that we're talking about and lease it, so neither here nor there. But one other thing I wanted to get cleared is the timeline.
Yep.
Last time you was here, you said the finalized acquisition was 12/31 of 18. What was that acquisition?
That's the land.
Land?
Yeah.
Okay, but you also had finalized land acquisition at 131.
That was the going forward with the Exhibit B in the agreement, where we would actually show the landowners, hey, this is where we would like to place the turbine, sort of where we would like to have the access route does that work with you? And that's something that they would have to sign off on. So that's when I say the December timeline where we're planning on getting wrapped up by Christmas, that's the actual land easements, and then in January, we'd hope to have an agreement
survey.
with the
We'll
landowner.
have the
on
surveys
specific
and then to
location.
finalize that by the end of January.
Right.
And then you want to execute our agreements by February 28th.
Yep.
And then a job fair maybe possibly in March.
Mid-March.
And begin the construction in June. Something like that.
Probably before June, I would say.
But anyway, I just wanted to double check my notes from last week because I was reading them over and I was a little at length because I was asked some questions on that and I wasn't sure how to answer them.
Okay. So for open house, like you mentioned, and Galen, please chime in as well. So, given the timeline that we just talked about, when would you like to have an event? Or when would you like us to have an event, I guess, right?
That's a good question. Not Christmas Eve.
It's a hard time of the year where something's not planned already with Christmas parties.
Yeah.
You think January, like after the New Year?
After the New Year.
You think in January? Would that work for, you think the community? So we've had an event in Sabetha, Seneca, and Corning. Do you think Seneca probably the best? What works best for everyone? And I don't know if anybody else has any ideas.
It's a county seat. I mean, Seneca's probably centrally located.
In my opinion, when I look at this right here, I just soon had it in Corning because that's where it affects most of the people.
There you go. Yeah.
That's
I
just
can
my
make it Corning
opinion.
just easy.
The last location, I think that was good, right?
Now, if you're gonna have more than one, okay, then whatever, but if you're just gonna have one,
Okay.
that's kind of the centralized location of where people are affected.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're not affected. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
But to me, I think that's where
Okay.
it ought to be.
Okay.
What do you guys? You okay with that?
No.
I'd say Seneca or Corning. Either way. Sabetha, they're all three very viable. Maybe, might ought to hit all three of them again. I don't know, but.
I don't have a problem with that either.
But the problem is, and the next question I get is from people that are already signed agreements, lease agreements. What are their options? They said, my Lord, if I'd have known it all, knowing I know now, I'd have never signed. But I don't know. I said, well, that's between you and NextEra. Is that the correct answer for me to
That
give?
is the correct answer, yes.
I didn't want to, I said, well, I would say that's between you and whoever you sign your lease agreement with. Or sign an agreement with Tim or somebody else.
We don't want to pit neighbor against neighbor, by having one of these. I think we don't want that.
Yes, I will say.
But we do need to get out there
I've had
if
two guys
people,
tell me the same thing.
like,
That's
you said they don't,
for a man to
that's the problem. They don't want to come
because I will tell you,
forward though, some people, and I understand
contract
that.
I signed
They tell us
7 years ago that
I gotta weigh both sides of the
you won't
fence.
find me saying I screwed
As
up.
you should.
That's a hard thing for.
Well,
I know what it is.
true,
I know very
but you
much.
see where I'm at back here though too, it's different.
I don't envy your position, Tim.
But I'm just saying, we gotta look at both sides of the equation a lot closer than what, you're still gonna look at your side more so than you will the other side. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, probably.
My wife tells me to.
Allows you to. Well, gentlemen, I think we need to
As
move
long as
on.
you keep it a
but-
conversation, everything goes
A
good.
couple more quick questions. You have a physical presence down here, downtown Seneca, 8 to 5, is that correct?
Is it 8 to 5, Mark? Are those our hours now?
It's just depending when somebody's got a bandwidth to be in there right now. It's pretty.
Okay.
Trying to
So,
fix things up.
there isn't somebody there 8 to 5? Yeah.
Sabetha too?
It was never 8 to 5, it was 11 to 5.
I see, okay, I just wondered
But
about
not every day.
transparency, if you will.
Here's our commitment. We'll attend the meetings on Mondays here. It'll be Spencer and myself will be here for the company. And we're representing the corporate side of things. Our team here is also able to represent us too, so we'll have somebody at the meetings.
Okay.
And then you keep alluding to Mark sitting in the left seat, who's that? One of you two guys?
I'm Mark.
We got two Marks. Too many Marks.
You both sit in the left seat of a light aircraft?
No.
No, oh, okay. You do. So these are private airstrips, runways, is that correct? FARs are different for a business airspace as opposed to a public airspace?
FARs.
Federal Aviation Regulations.
So there's very little that regulates the airspace for those airports.
Okay, so I'll check into that. I just wondered.
You're a pilot, you say? Did you ask what an FAR was?
I didn't, I'm trying to just make sure what he was alluding to in that question exactly.
Dennis, can I still ask one question? On the setbacks, all you guys are talking about homes. What about, is it homes or property line?
Well, that's what I mean. That we're into the same field, because if somebody has got a home next to a property line.
Okay, but homes or property lines? I mean, this setback, in other words, if I don't have a home in this setback, they can set it right next to my property.
500 feet's a close.
500 feet is what my understanding is on a property line.
So that's still, that doesn't change that.
Is that what it is in the contract?
We haven't arrived at anything in a contract right now. That would be something that you guys could ask.
But it can't be any closer than 500 feet because the tower is roughly 500 feet
Yeah,
tall.
I would say 500 feet is that's 1 times the tower height, and many times we see 1.25 would be
I see.
reasonable.
So I guess to answer your question, it's probably at least 750.
500 feet.
Well, but he said 1.25 times so it's about 750. It'd probably be the minimum.
But neither of those are in the contract.
Realistically, if it's not in the contract, it's not.
Not in the contract. What I was alluding to is if we did something with the county with memorialization of what we will follow for internal setbacks with our project, we could put in there distance from non-participating landowners, or property lines should be this, distance from a home will be this, and leave it at that. So,
And I think many of you understand that in Nemaha County, we're a little different than they are in flatland. You know, in a flatland, they'll go right down the section line. They'll go down the property line because that's the best and takes the least land away. Where here, they kind of got to go where the wind is my understanding, in what research I've done. So, that could affect, but yeah,
These are 480 foot tall?
About.
What they'll be?
About, yes, sir.
Mark, you're the pilot. What's pattern altitude approaching an airport?
So it depends, what airport and everything. It's usually between 800 and 1100. Depends, but somewhere in that range.
So I got one other comment if you got time. We got a situation where, and I can't find the map yet that shows it, but we've been told it's been signed up. We've got property on 3 sides of this piece of ground. The people that own that piece of ground live in Topeka, so they don't give a crap whether they get a tower on their land or not. But I'm on 3 sides of it. That's just something you need to take into consideration, I think.
again, that's a non-participating landowner, that's what we've been, my biggest worry all along, and that is absent landowners, number one. And it goes back to communication, I mean, if you got a landowner next to you that communicates with you, life would be a lot easier. But now we don't seem to have that communication level we used to have, so there's some issues there, and we hope that maybe this will wake people up and say, listen, we need to talk to our neighbors, because we're all in this together, and we need to figure out what's fair.
Well, I think there needs to be some way that the non-participating guy has some teeth of some sort that they would want to have desire to communicate with me. We keep talking about all this communication, and they say that a mile setback will kill it. Well, if we set the mile setback, and then if it makes them want to come talk to me about being able to place that closer than that 1 mile, I don't think we want to kill it, and I'm not the one that wants to kill it either. But
I just know the last time around when we set it at 3,000 feet, they brought us the map of what would work, and they were down to 3 windmills.
Well, but I'm saying,
and if you go 5280 feet, then suddenly you got nothing. I mean, it's just not. I mean, we can set it, but the only way we can. I mean, first of all, there are 2 ways this is going to get done. One is by agreement. We can't make them agree to anything without essentially zoning the county, setting some setbacks, and then deciding, hey, like the last time where we just killed the project. So we can't force them into that unless we decide we're going to zone the county and we're going to establish setbacks of a certain amount, I mean, a mile. But then my guess is they're probably not going to come talk to you. They're going to go somewhere else to try a different county.
Well, I'm fine with that. But otherwise,
Well, you're fine with that, but maybe not.
Well, but they have no reason. They have no reason to come talk to me. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
they have a
they
reason.
do, though.
They have a reason to go talk to that landowner because they're trying to get that land to put a turbine on it. But they have no reason to come talk to the guy across the fence.
Well, they do, because if we keep having rooms full of people who are angry about this, it impacts them. I mean,
yeah, but I don't think that's.
You know, when small parcels come into consideration is when there's not enough ground out there to put wind turbines on, and we have to try to put them closer to, houses. That's when the discussion comes up. If we've got sufficient enough ground that we can keep these far enough back from receptors, we'll do that, or houses will do that. And in the case where we just can't simply move that turbine, then that discussion has to come to you. So maybe if you don't hear from us, that's a good thing too, if we can maintain the setbacks that we're talking about with the county. They're probably not sufficient enough for you, but at least they work for everybody else in the county, or they should.
Well, if they work for everybody else, then you wouldn't have a problem going and talking to those people. And hey, it's going to work for me at a quarter of a mile. It's going to work for me for $5,000. I can put a dollar amount on what that thing's going to look out my picture window. Until that happens, I have no way of having that. You have no reason to have that conversation.
Understandable until that happens. So.
Yeah, I told Spencer this from the very get-go, that the more people who are happy about this and supporting this project, the easier it is for them to get behind a project like this as well. The more people that are complaining because they got windmills in their backyard and they're not being compensated for that, then the more difficult it is for them to proceed with a project like this. So it is in their best interest to talk to non-participating landowners and make them participating landowners by giving them some financial incentive.
Right.
So Spencer, when you come up with the turbine survey, will you provide us a map of where these windmills are going to be within this footprint?
Yes.
And will there be any outside that footprint? Do you have any idea of any of that?
I mean, that comes into the discussion with the setbacks as well.
Okay.
So
there's nothing to say that it can't be 3 miles east or west of Centralia, which is 5 miles from where you got it drawn now.
Oh, you're saying even though the setback is, okay, yeah, there's not at all. That very well could happen.
So in other words, you could very well widen this footprint one more time.
Oh, I thought you said the other way, like we would actually move the turbines away from Centralia. I thought that's what you meant.
Well, if you put a turbine out here, you're going to widen that footprint.
Oh, I thought you were talking about individual locations on the footprint.
Well,
okay.
Two
No, I
questions.
understand what you're saying. No, I mean, we're going to do everything we can to stay within that footprint. I think especially considering the conversations we've had today.
Okay. Well, like I said, the further south you say, the better off you're going to be, but.
Okay, and we'll take that into consideration as well.
Which there's some areas outside that footprint may be better.
Yep.
Which footprint are we referring to?
Possible.
Can you clarify? Red or blue?
Blue. Both. Red and blue, but blue is the one they're presented now. Red was the original.
Yes.
And we're yet to be determined whether or not you can legally widen that footprint and still stay within
We just had
the
this
lifetime exemption.
made, and there's what it looks like. Red was what it was, purple is what it is, and then this is kind of the airstrip thing drawn in the middle from Heinen's, from their attorney or whatever, that in green. And then, of course, Centralia, I guess that's Centralia, I can't even close that golf, I don't know. Centralia there?
Centralia's like right here. Yep.
So this was that right. Corning, golf, and it's 2 miles roughly radius around those.
Yeah. But anyway.
Well, it's, look, to me, it looks better when I can see it, let alone 3 different maps to look at, but this is how we done it. If anybody wants to.
Mr. Wilkie, back to your comment about looking at a setback and potentially killing the project. Rightfully so, it seems that you're concerned about those who have signed leases. I just ask that you reciprocate that concern for those that haven't signed leases. I was thinking about that with regard to our discussion about how that input or feedback is weighted.
Well, and my only point
Now,
was that a mile is not reasonable. That our experience in the past, 3,000 feet killed a project, you double that, you've really killed a project. So I don't want you to get expectations that it's a mile or it's nothing, and you're putting the pressure on these gentlemen to impose a mile setback requirement on this project, because that's probably not, we need to be reasonable about this, and that's not reasonable to expect them to do that. Because you said you don't want to kill the project, that would kill the project.
I didn't say I didn't want to kill the project.
Okay.
What I said was, I'm not saying I don't want to kill the project.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know that Doug seems to be unreasonable about living a mile from the towers.
Yeah.
Doug's the only expert in the room. I mean, is there anyone else that lives anywhere within 5 miles of Turbine except Doug? Okay, how close?
Mark does.
Oh, the closest one is probably 3/8 of a mile.
Okay, and you have a vested interest in the industry too, so I'm gonna have to disqualify you. But Doug has lived there longer than anybody in this room, he's closer than anybody. So I have to listen to Doug and his parents, I just do, so.
Yeah, Darren?
But you four guys need to keep in mind that Brad had an analogy last week that you can't go to a Ford dealership and offer $5,000 for a $50,000 pickup. Well, you guys aren't the ones trying to buy the $50,000 pickup. You guys have got the Dodge Demon that they only made 500 of. They want the wind. You're not trying to sell them.
Okay.
Please keep that in mind. You got what they want.
I don't know how you do the whole setback thing to make it to where, like with, in my mind, I would just like it to where, I wouldn't mind, you know, having the discussion, but I still can't come into my mind where that discussion comes from for those of us who have made the investment to purchase land in this community, to build a substantial investment, and then to be sitting there, left out in the cold, and then having the commissioners or whoever come in and say, well, you can build it within a quarter mile of my house, and then I just have to deal with that. I mean, I have to be the one that gets stuck with the depreciated land value. I get stuck with living by the things. I get stuck with all the problems. The guy that owns the property gets all the benefits, and you have no reason to have any type of a conversation with me. That's what I'm saying.
They do though, like I said, they need to have that conversation with you so that you're not in here complaining to these guys.
Well, I think I understand, yes, when it's all said and done, but we're not done.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I understand what you're saying, but we're not done.
Right, but that's what I want to make sure that.
I know your voice is strongly that you want to have a part in what that setback is.
Yeah.
And I understand that if we put it in a significant amount, with whatever's common sense, kinda, and then a little more, that makes them come back to you. Then I see what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right, Tim. That's what I'm saying, is that they've got a reason then to come and talk to me.
Well, I think it's in the best just right now to go talk to everybody.
So I can't, there's nothing that I'm gonna have a conversation.
Well, not you, because you're not affected by this project. But anybody who is affected by this project, I think it would be in their best interest, once they get this engineering plan and say, woo, we're within 1,800 feet of this guy's property, we need to go talk to them.
You don't even have to worry about the conversation until they have that done, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're trusting that they're gonna put them where they say they're gonna put them there too. I mean, there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of trust back and forth. You come with your engineer and say, this is where we're gonna put it. Oh, okay. Well, it doesn't affect me, so I'm gonna go home. I don't think that's.
Well, I presume that engineering plan will be attached to any sort of agreement the county reaches with.
And who's to say once they get this original thing done, then the next step is going to be up in your neighborhood, and then when the problem really gets translated.
Right, but again, I'm here, and we've voiced this, I really don't have a dog in your fight to speak of, but I'm the dog for somebody else that wants to be in the same situation that I'm going to be in. I'm going to say that. It's just because, it's just, if people don't, and I didn't come to your meetings, it didn't affect me. That's why I'm glad that you have agreed to go to the next step of putting it on another meeting, and I'll be at that one if there's any way humanly possible. But yeah, that's the main thing, is just finding a way that we have a voice. And if I as a non-participating landowner that owns a home in that area, I want to have something in it to where there's a reason for them to come and have a conversation with me. That's the.
Where they're absolutely forced.
Well, right, yeah, and not that I want to hold, but hey, look, if we want to have some type of because there are going to be people to say, if you're like you're saying it's going to kill the deal, well, you offered that landowners, and the number's all been thrown out, it's $10,000 a piece. So if you've offered that landowner $10,000 a piece for these, there was a number that he decided that he was going to give up that amount of land. There's a number that would make me want to have one closer than a half mile. There is a number out there that would want, now it may be way more than that, and we may not want to have that conversation, but there is a number.
Hey, once again, that's what we all do.
Right.
I want $1 million a year, I'm not putting a windmill in.
And you're right, there is numbers.
Oh,
I mean, there's numbers to make people want to live along a railroad track in Nemaha County and Sabetha and Seneca. There's numbers, they just got done running that electrical line up Wetmore Sabetha Road. There's numbers that'll get people to accept.
Right.
So finding that and the communication thing is again the hot spot. But I think I'm like Tim. I don't think we can accomplish a lot more here today unless somebody else has got something they really want to hit. You know, we need to move on. We're welcome to stay and visit some more.
If we have an open house, though, I would hope you're going to get a lot of pros and cons in there. People. And it can get carried away. And I don't want that.
Well, the thing is, you know, it's so many of the pros, Tim, are going to be people that signed these contracts, and like Galen said, they've got a clause in there where they ain't supposed to come. You know.
Well, an open house? Probably not.
Well, I mean, and then
but they're not supposed to say a lot, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know what their contract says. I guess that's true.
Maybe they can, but I'm going to tell you the way the language is wrote, most of us would say we better keep our mouth shut. You know, I don't know. I agree. I know what you're saying, and I know that you think but that is my opinion from some of the people I've talked to.
A little bit.
Is that right?
How does it work? Is this just an informational meeting for the people that are concerned for, say, with setbacks? You know, maybe that's a better meeting to have. You guys got these landowners signed up. Why in a sense would they need to be there?
Yeah.
All that could be is just a big troubled thing, or maybe we just need to try to organize a meeting for, say, with the ones that are in question. It'll be the ones that haven't signed up. I don't know.
I think to have that discussion, whatever the forum is, they both need to be there. That's no different than.
But what are they going to gain, per se? I know it's knowledge, but I don't want this thing to get carried away.
Again, there
you get into that big setting.
Do you have the meeting, or do you just have a go around like they've had? You know, see, before they really haven't set up and had a meeting and presented their case that I've been to. Most of the time they've got different stations. You can walk around, talk to them, you know, and investigate it. But to actually sit down and say, you know, and address a group of people and take questions. But I know I've been to the 3 or 4 of these, and most of them are.
Honestly, I don't know what the right compromise is. I wouldn't want to. Let's just say I was dead set against wind farm. Period.
Yes.
Which isn't the case. I don't want me saying I want a 2-mile setback to have influence, and I don't want to upset my neighbor who
maybe wants one.
I think there should be.
It might be his only salvation.
You can't have that discussion without both sides. I don't know what the right format is.
I think we could have we have an interest in talking to those smaller parcels, or those landowners with smaller parcels. And I think maybe the forum that we do is to get our array designed, or our design, and then go ahead and reach out to those smaller parcels of ground, have those folks come in, and let's do a smaller group meeting where we can get something done. Yes. You know, a lot of times people.
With non-participating, per se.
Non-participating smaller parcels of ground, we invite them to a meeting, and maybe we break it up by quadrant in the project, so we can go with a lot more attention to those landowners to explain to them exactly where the proposed turbines are at.
Listen to that, would that make sense?
And only non-participating, because then you don't get into those situations where it's
if
this person versus this person, right?
Yeah.
right? We want to avoid that. I mean, like you said, right?
And we need to engage with those people anyway. That's the perfect time to do it, and do it on a smaller scale. And we don't have, it's not a big show, it's just sitting down and being neighborly and talking to them like, here's where that turbine's gonna go, where do you live? Okay, I live in this house right here. This is what that means, okay?
Yeah.
And we listen to them, okay?
Yeah, I think that discussion needs to be held, most
Can I
definitely.
throw something out there, Mark? Most folks, first of all, none of us in this room have ever lived near anything that's 500 feet tall. None of us, especially 500 feet in motion. So I think when you have that question, the numbers don't mean much. 1,400 feet sounds like a big number, but how do you quantify that objectively? So I think we have to be careful, assuming that every landowner, homeowner is going to know how to even engage in that discussion. I'm going to come back to saying, you guys, and you said it earlier, Dennis, somehow I think the citizenry of this county needs some safety net for what they don't know. That's what I'm concerned about here. Because a number, 1,400 feet, what do you do with that? We don't even talk about 1,400 feet. Our GPS says it, and we never quite know what it means. 1,000 feet to whatever. Crap, what is that? Oh, it's a quarter of a mile, almost. So, see what I'm saying? I think we just have to be careful, assuming that these conversations will be informed enough to be productive and protect the citizenry from what they don't know. So that's just.
But you're trying to let us then be the decision maker over their property. Somewhat. If you're saying they're not going to educate themselves enough, so we have to take over and do it for them, and I don't think that's right.
Hey, Tim, I think what he's getting at is I, for one, wasn't informed because I thought it didn't affect me.
I understand. Now, I think that's getting out there, though.
That needs to get out in a big way because
yeah,
that boundary line a mile outside of Centralia got some pretty good explicatives out of a few people when they saw that it's in my backyard. I didn't think they were over here. There's a lot of unknowns.
That's what I've got a little bit of an issue with your idea, not to be trying to pick out a few guys that are, trying to have a little meeting with a few guys that are affected. I mean, I think it needs to be all of us, because ultimately the whole county is going to be affected. I mean, it needs to be.
Well, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, it needs to be
sooner or later.
Yeah, it needs to be something that all of us.
But what I was bringing about is a mechanism that we could have a conversation with those landowners that own smaller parcels and maybe do it on a smaller scale, not an open house per se, because it's not really good to sit down and talk.
Can you go see those landowners?
Well, we can engage those landowners. That would be another option too, is to engage them and give them a phone call, say, let's sit down, do you want to, talk about where this is at? I think we need to involve more people from our company because, that the design of the wind farm comes back to Spencer and the wind farm designers, the land deals come back to Mark and his team, and, so we need to have.
Oh, now we're at that point where those two meet, right?
Yeah, that's the convergence of where we're at right now.
So I guess you got some food for thought.
Yeah. Yes, sir. We've got some work to do.
Okay.
So do we.
Yep.
Make sure that people are informed.
Yep.
Good.
Well, thank you all for coming today. Appreciate it. And your input is more valuable than you think.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Doug. See ya. Thanks for coming.
See you later.
All right, yeah, there you go.
Sorry, sir.
Look at this map.
What's that?
Yeah, it's here.
It actually came in.
Thanks, Mark.
Into Jackson County a little bit too. We just chopped that off because they're not going down there. Well, it's inside this.
Let me out of here.
That is their target area. So,
That's it, those
meetings are quite the Big 12
tournament time.
how can they expand?
There we go, very good. Mark, I'm Brad Liberty.
He's turning your hiring.
This is Wetmore?
Westar.
We're over here.
Right, Gary, where are you?
Yeah, you would be.
We're in 2.
You're in Capioma.
We're 2.
Yeah, you're in section 2.
Darren's been a busy man.
Well, we had like 6 people
And-
change the Meals on Wheels. They
And I will
thought
tell, my big thing in this, now, a lot of these are old,
Yeah, the red ones are no longer,
they're old.
and the light.
Expired.
Yeah.
Yep, we know that.
I understand.
But
I usually just
all of
use
these
the
are
little-
current, all of the yellow, and what you've got is 5 different companies represented by the different colors.
So where's your key for that?
It's on here, and it's kinda, I didn't make it.
Oh, okay.
We got that list.
Same one
You've
for
got
Rich used to be like that.
the orange is per JW Prairie Wind Power, which that's up there.
Right.
These are the Blues Boulevard and Associates.
That's next era.
Yep, that's next
Green
era.
is Soldier Creek Wind,
That's next era. So green and blue are both next era.
and the yellow is Invenergy.
And the yellow, so they don't have
A lot. You see,
a lot.
Gonna get better on that.
Darren just put
Now, what's
the
interesting about
leases from the
this
Register of Deeds on it.
I've got a lot of people that have said that they
Yeah.
have signed
Spent a lot of time on it.
that aren't represented on this. In other words, that they haven't filed the lease yet with Roxanne.
Time goes faster, but the days
Yeah.
go on.
And these are people that have told me that they have signed leases.
Like some days
So
you sit
Why
there,
would they have a signed lease
This is-
and not
and-
file it?
And I will tell you, some of that is from in this area. And
Closer
some
to
of it is
Seneca, you're saying?
in this area. In other words, most of those that I've been told of, well, I think Illinois was included in some of those.
So I'm sorry, what's green and what's blue?
This,
They have
the
their
blue is
ways.
Boulevard and Associates, the green is Soldier Creek Wind Farm, the yellow is Invenergy. And most of these, although you can see clear up here, you know, and
Yeah, there's a little bit of Boulevard and Associates activity north of Bern.
that's part of why I brought this,
I don't know, Brad.
decided
They're
to
new.
bring this back in, because
They're new.
like
But
Doug
that's
was saying
not-
that he's not gonna be
They're not
affected.
with NextEra?
Yeah, it is next year.
Okay.
The blue and the green are
But
both
that's a
next
separate
year.
project, that's not part of this
He didn't
project, or it
think
is?
he
Well,
would.
look at
He
these,
knows
these
he's
are in the
affected.
project.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm wondering, yeah.
So,
So this is a Boulevard and Associates, which is part of NextEra.
And orange, red, whatever?
These are the.
UV.
the
Expired.
orange
UV.
are
Those are
Probably
expired.
expired, JW Wind Power.
Okay.
yeah,
And the purple was one of the.
Nemaha Wind. There weren't very many of those.
So, when you look at this, like I said to Dennis, when they threw that expanded map out, that infuriated me because this is not what was discussed. Well, they are actively leasing ground even well outside of that expanded area.
True, because if you look at the purple map, there's a lot of these that are west of the purple.
I say,
here.
do you have an interest in doing the whole county? Do you want it before somebody else gets it?
Yeah, good question.
Now, whether they have any intentions of building is neither here nor there, but I think it's to their advantage to sign as much land as they can if they're gonna sign it, to keep somebody else from making them a bad name, because when somebody says Invenergy, they're thinking of next day.
Yeah.
The non-people don't know that.
And I will say that my customers that have said that have told me that they're talking about better money now.
They being who?
Customers have said that these wind companies are talking better money. If you pin them down on which company, it's Invenergy.
So Invenergy's raising the stakes?
Invenergy has been raising the stakes with them.
Which,
I get it, from a business perspective, I get that.
Oh, yeah.
It's not so good for
Put
community.
yourself in the business shoes of
But if
well,
energy's yellow,
I'll liken that to US Highway 75 going through my kitchen.
True, you've been displaced, you know what this is.
We all
This is the one
of
that
us that
really
were
technically-
affected by that.
You know,
Yeah, we had big meetings,
they went over
big
that.
meetings, there were only half a dozen of us. Okay,
Absolutely.
what are we gonna
You know
do?
what? They was-
Bottom line is, Gary Leslie came to
And they're the
terms
first
with
ones that
Tatum.
signed almost
Right, on an
everything.
individual
And,
basis.
yeah,
For
we all,
this thing, and I
and
wonder
we
if they
were,
have any idea
we were happy.
what it's gonna be
Did
like.
somebody
to have-
else get more than we did?
What this
Maybe,
is
but so what?
took my.
It didn't, we were happy with what we came to.
Because you negotiated your own agreement.
That's correct. Yeah. And the same holds true here.
And this is everything that's been registered thus far in the county.
But I told Spencer,
And my point in this is,
the biggest project is
they started here,
and there's
and
probably
then
a
they
few
expanded out to here.
homes, I mean, residences are gonna be impacted by setback. Read
Now,
about
these
each
are
one of them
most
$10,000 a
old,
year,
they're there,
just to go along with this.
There's
That's a drop in the bucket.
Okay.
This is Boulevard and Associates.
But the more people they have in here say, I like this project, versus those who are complaining because they're putting one 1,800 feet from my home.
Is,
Makes it a lot easier for you gentlemen to work with them, so I'm hoping
Those
that-
two are leasing agents, I guess, from NextEra.
It was alluded to a little bit about.
This is interesting.
People.
So
When you
if,
put it on
if
paper,
you were upset
keeping
about
their
them
mouth
expanding outside of
There's no
this,
legally binding
to here.
document that would support
look at what they're
that.
doing outside.
There is in the Invenergy one, that lease says you will not
Outside of
speak.
Seneca.
I don't know about the NextEra one, but the
Not speak, does
Invenergy.
it not reveal the
Right
terms of the
on the
agreement or
edge
not
of
speak?
Seneca. You say
Not
that's
speak in a disparaging
That's
manner,
Invenergy.
I think is
Okay.
the way it's phrased.
Is that right?
That's
That
a
would be-
subsidiary.
I understand
I wonder if
as
that
far as
wasn't
revealing
who
the terms of the
started them
agreement,
back in
that's
the day,
enforced.
because that's weird.
But
These
but
are
when you
all
start
the old ones, kinda.
restricting
That's when they
things that
came
way,
in
you're
here.
probably gonna run into a
Well, I would assume, but it's, yeah, but
These are all
but it
18.
suppresses
Oh,
people
really?
that aren't aware of that.
Yeah.
If they signed it and they know it's in there, yeah, I don't know.
14.
Okay. Was what?
Most of them were since 14.
Well, yeah, that's still.
Do you guys, Brad, you can answer this, is there a way, because these are the only ones that are registered with Invenergy, just ask Ian.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we know they've been really, really active. Is there any way to kind of force them to turn them in sooner? Is there like a requirement of how quickly they're supposed to turn them in?
And I'll also tell you this, there's grounds.
It's just hard to know.
I've been told by guys that they have signed the
I
leases.
guess from their standpoint,
That aren't on
they
there.
have that legally
And they
binding
don't have
document
paperwork.
with Gary Scobie's signature on it.
These
Doesn't mean
are
they
all
have to
through
go
the
over
14th.
here.
And of course,
But don't they have to file it?
Well, ultimately they would.
But under what regulatory, so like as a, when do they have to
Not have a
file?
lot of wind
Well,
down there.
they filed to protect their rights. To let the public know, hey, we have this and it's part of it.
That's what I
So
said.
if you settle this,
They
it's
wanted
part
me
of
to
it.
sign.
We better get the
So,
rest and get
I
in.
mean, there's no,
Can,
Okay, all right.
it's kinda like,
You had to bind it, make sure it's right.
Yeah, I had one.
You had one, huh?
You want one?
I mean, if I sell you 3 acres of property and give you a deed for that, do you have to file that deed?
Right, that's my question, I don't understand how it works. So it's really for the protection of the person who owns the contract, more so than the rest of it, okay.
So a lot of the names on here.
I've seen that.
Don't agree with the names.
So you're telling me, no,
We can come,
this
we
down
can.
here, all these, those aren't 7 or 8 years old.
No, only these.
The map itself.
The map itself. Oh, okay.
and then he, when he colored it
Could be
in,
different
the
landowners.
name, yeah, the name doesn't necessarily match.
But I ordered myself a replacement for it, and I'll be happy to get it.